Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I'm Reyes Amidas. I am with Fresh Arts. I am the programs coordinator, and today we have a very, very special treat for you. If you're here, you know what this is about. This is the virtual workshop for the goal setting strategies for creatives. And so if you're here, there's an inkling that you're wanting to plan for the year ahead. And I think there is something to say about how creatives kind of think about these things, how they see the future, how they plan things out, and that's why we make it a point to host this, because we do know that ideation, formulation of those goals and plans just doesn't come easy for some of us. I know that's not the case for me. It takes me a minute to think about things and to test them out, and so we have an amazing treat for you today. It's someone we love working with. I know it's someone I love working with. And so it is Epi Chad. I'm going to go ahead and read her bio real quick just to give some time for people to come in, but also just so you know how awesome she is. So Epi Chad is a practicing multidisciplinary artist, advocate, environmentalist who tells stories using textiles, fibers, metals, places, and people. Chad's work studies humanity's relationship to both natural and built environments through time. Chad was selected as one of the first ever resident artists for the City of Houston by the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs while working with an eco-art coastal margin preservation nonprofit in Galveston. After taking a sabbatical for a residency with the city, Chad took her current role as Director of Community Engagement at Art League Houston. Additionally, Chad currently serves as part of the team of facilitators for the Artist Inc. Houston program, as Board Vice President for Artists, and on the steering committees for the National Guild of Community Arts Education Creative Aging Network, as well as the Houston Museum Educators Roundtable. Epi believes art is for every community and creativity is in every human. So I'm going to go ahead and bring her on. How you doing, Epi?
Hi, Reyes. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. It is quite a year. And so I'm excited for you today. I'm going to go ahead and let you take it away. But first things first, we're going to have a Q&A at the end. So go ahead and ask your questions whenever they come to you, but we're going to get to them at the end. So just so y'all know. And another thing we want you to do is please let us know where you're watching from. We love to know who's tuning in. So please, Epi, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this extremely momentous week. Kind of doing a little bit of happy dancing off and on these past couple of days. But this last year has been a lot. I mean, it doesn't really matter who you are and what your life looks like. This last year has just been really special. There's light on the horizon, and I'm feeling really optimistic. And I'm really thrilled to start the new year paying some attention to planning for this bright and happy new future that we have ahead of us. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So in our time together today, we are going to discuss why goal setting is important. Sounds like a simple task, but taking it seriously can take a little bit of practice. We're also going to discuss some strategies for setting smart goals. We'll be working through the Fresh Arts Goal Setting Toolkit that I worked with Fresh Arts on to write last year. So feel free to follow along there if you have access to it, or you can grab your favorite notebook and just follow along there. We're going to work through it kind of quickly during this workshop. You'll have plenty of time to go back and complete and spend some time with it after the session. So I mentioned goal setting as a practice. It really is. It's something that you get used to over time. I wasn't always an avid goal setter, even though anyone who knows me knows that I am a habitual planner and list maker. It took me a while. I've only really been actively writing down my goals and formatting them and tracking them for 3 or 4 years now. And it's kind of amazing to see the difference it's made to be able to track my progress. So there's a little bit of magic in writing things down. I know that the writers among us know this. Sometimes the rest of us creatives aren't the best at writing things down. I really think that actualizing your goals sometimes comes from telling somebody about them, telling someone, telling everyone, yelling it from the top of a mountain or the roof of your apartment building or whatever. Speaking your visions out loud can really help you hold yourself accountable to the goals that you're setting for yourself. So you can go one step further and write them down. That makes your visions into concrete plans that you've laid for yourself. And the great thing about that is then you get to go back and see what you've done. It's really amazing to write a goal, almost kind of forget that you did it, go back a year later and say, oh my God, I did that in like a couple of months. I thought it would take me so long. So how do you realize a grand vision? How do you start a big project? Well, it's planning, but what is planning really? It's taking a project and breaking it down into a manageable to-do list. You need to make it into little chunks. So let's break goal setting down into some simple steps. Let's talk about knowing who you are, where you're going, and how to get there. Before you come up with great goals and a serious plan of action, I think it's really important to do a little bit of self-assessment here and there. The world's a pretty quickly changing place, more than ever now, and we are busy and complicated beings that are constantly growing and changing as well. So it's good to do a regular check-in with yourself, see where you are. So let's talk about that first step. Let's talk about knowing yourself. So who are you and what do you want? I mean, I'm not the same person I was a year ago, and I want surprisingly different things than I did a year ago. So let's play a little game together. If you've got your toolkit, you can write this into the toolkit or your notebook or grab a piece of paper. What I'd like you to do is take a moment to think about you and who you are and describe yourself in 10 simple terms. Now, when you're doing this, be specific. Are you a creative? If you're a creative, what does that mean? Are you an artist, a visual artist? Are you a musician? Are you a writer? Are you an actor, a dancer, a tightrope walker? All of the above? Are you a parent? What about the chefs out there? Or just a foodie that aspires to be a chef one day? Or a runner? Do you love ice cream? Maybe don't write the ice cream one down unless you're really, really serious about your ice cream. I'll go ahead and share my list with you. And this, like I said, this has changed over time. And especially after this last year, a few of the additions to my list are not unexpected, but I've realized those things about me over this last year where we've found different ways to engage with one another. So my list right now has artist, advocate, environmentalist. You heard all that in my bio. Here's the one that really clicked for me this year, connector. And I don't think that that's something that wasn't true before, but I see it in myself now. Collaborator, organizer, naturalist, wanderer, foodie, and friend. I think it's nice to do this every now and again. Just give yourself a little bit of time to think about how you see yourself and what's important to you. It really does change over time. Now, if you've gotten through your 10 terms, great. If not, you can come back and finish up your list later. So now that we know who we are, let's talk a little bit about who makes us or what makes us who we are. What are your values? What are the things about you that you hold dear and that make you proud to be you? Are you dependable? Are you adventurous? Are you particularly trustworthy? So let's give ourselves a moment to think about what values drive us, what values other people can appreciate in us, and what values make us, or the building blocks of who we are. I'll share mine with you, and I always have a hard time thinking about these values in words. So give yourself plenty of time. Think about this over the rest of the day. Think about it for the rest of the week. My list right now: honest, dependable, determined, loyal, productive, efficient, independent. I have optimistic, dedicated, and curious. Curious is a new addition this year. But overall, I would say the list of values that you hold dear don't change as much as the identifiers, how you see yourself. You know, our lives fluctuate, but who we are at the core kind of stays the same, and you just build on that over time. So the next one is really fun. We know who we are. We know what we stand for. Let's talk about what vision of success looks like for you. I mean, it's different for every person. I mean, your vision of success could include having a family. It could include having a really successful studio practice. Your vision could include owning your own business, or it could be having an active lifestyle. It could be yearly vacations and specific vacations. You could say you want to do one vacation in the mountains, one on a beach every year. I'm not going to limit you to 10 things to put on your list of successes, because you can just kind of keep going with that. Be as specific as you want, be as broad as you want. This is all about you and how you see your life in the perfect, happy version of itself. I've been thinking a lot about my success list, and I will share that once a year, I take some time at the beginning of the year, and I, in this particular notebook, write down all of my successes for the year. And sometimes there are things that I would put on the list, you know, prior to the year that I was aiming for. And sometimes just cool things happen, and I realize, oh, wow, that is something that I see as a marker of success. I have a new addition to my vision of success. It's new to 2021. I'm really excited about it. I'll go ahead and say it's a little bit of a long-term goal. I have recently been somewhat obsessed with the idea of doing like a long through trek. And if I could pick a place, I kind of want to trek the Great Wall of China. I don't know why my brain has been in that place, but now that it's on there, I don't think it'll come off my list of success. I think it's just going to have to happen. So, you know, take your time and keep adding to that list of successes as we go. So we know who we are, what we want. Now let's talk about getting to that vision of success. Think of your life's journey and goal setting as a roadmap to that life's journey. So why is goal setting important? I mean, it seems like a simple thing to do, right? You set a goal, you think of an idea, wait for it to happen. I think that making goal setting a practice makes you look at the steps to the goal in a more realistic way. Goal setting really does help trigger new behaviors. If you say that you're going to finish X number of works by the end of the year, and you set that as a goal, then you can start to put in practice a certain amount of time on a weekly basis to put towards your practice. If your goal is, say, buying a new home, well, then you can start the process of searching and planning if you need to downsize, but it gives you a way to move forward. It also helps you guide your focus. Is the goal that you're setting important to you? Do you need to put more of your resources and energy towards that goal? It also helps you keep moving. Sustaining momentum is really important to our productivity, to our general happiness. And in this moment, I'm really speaking to us as creatives. We all know that motion and that output is really important to the way that we function as people. It also really helps you with a sense of confidence when you reach your goals. It's the sense of having done well, an achievement, and that's worth its weight in gold. Makes you feel great. So what kind of, or how do you begin to set goals? So there's a system called SMART goals, and I'm sure some of you are familiar with this or have tried this in the past. SMART goals are just a great way to set yourself up for success. It's the idea of taking a vision, an idea, a goal, and really assessing whether it's going to work for you and help you build that action plan. So what does SMART stand for? SMART stands for specific. So specific meaning, rather than saying, well, I want a successful practice, maybe you rethink that and say, I want a self-sustaining business model for my studio practice, being very specific. Measurable. So I'm gonna stick with the studio practice example here. So measurable. How will you know that your studio practice is successful? How do you gauge that? Maybe that means when you're covering all of your overhead and turning a profit in the studio practice, maybe it's something like working on a specific direction, like you want a very specific residency, and working on your studio practice is building up your portfolio of work to get to that residency. So we're thinking measurable, something that you can pin down and add to like a to-do list. So the next one's attainable. That's, I think, a really important one to always keep in mind. I always think, like, is it attainable? What does that mean? Well, I have an active imagination. I have visions of being some sort of space princess that has like an intergalactic unicorn. That's not really realizable, though. So that would be nixed off my SMART goal list, unless I can figure out some fantastic art project that does actually get me an intergalactic unicorn. It's maybe possible. Relevant is the next one. Relevant is thinking about how your goal is going to help you achieve your bigger picture of success. Does that goal fit into your hopes for your future? Is it something that will help build your practice, build your personal network, build your financial stability? Is it actually relevant to your life, or is it just a random one-off? And relevance is really important when you're thinking about prioritizing the amount of effort that you're putting towards a goal, right? I mean, like I said, we're all really busy people, and I don't think any of us have a lot of extra time to just kind of throw around. So making sure that we're really focusing our efforts in places that will help us long-term is always important. And then the last one, making sure your goal is time-based. This one's pretty important too. And it kind of comes back to the measurable part of the SMART goal system. So going back to that studio practice example, if I'm coming up with a time-based goal for a successful studio practice, I could look at that by saying, well, I want my studio practice to be fully sustainable by the end of 2021. And then at the end of 2021, you can decide whether you did it or not. Or if you're working towards that residency, maybe it's a matter of saying, well, I want that residency in the summer of 2022. And then you'll know if you hit that goal or not. Now, I want to take a moment to talk about the time-based portion of SMART goal setting. It's important to give yourself leeway. If, life changes, things come up. Let's say you aimed for that residency in 2022 and something happens and you have to push it back. Don't consider that anything. It's not that you haven't succeeded. It's okay to edit. It's okay to shift. It's okay to continuously change along with our lives. So, go back and look at that and say, well, 2022 is not happening. I can make it 2023, 2024. You can always shift your goals. You can also decide, as you're working towards something, going back to relevance, that goal made a lot of sense for you when you wrote it 3 or 4 years ago, but you're in a new place in your life and that goal is no longer relevant. Well, you can shift that goal. It's not failure. Being able to edit and move forward efficiently in your own life is a success. Now, setting SMART goals really just comes down to a simple system that helps you come up with plans that are realistic and attainable and lets you kind of break things down into chunks and kind of think about how you want to move forward. Kind of now thinking about my intergalactic unicorn friend, and maybe I will come up with a project that will work that into a goal. So let's talk about creating some goals and thinking about it in a time-based way. We're going to start big picture. Give yourself a minute. Think about where you are, what you want, who you are. Think about the things that you were thinking about when we created our list of visions of success. And think about something that you would like to achieve in the next 5 years. I'm just going to give everyone a second to look inside themselves. Does everyone have an idea? Does anyone out there want to share their ideas in the comments for their 5-year goals? I bet a lot of the people that are joining us for this workshop probably already have a 5-year goal. So now we're going to break down our 5-year goal. This will be a little exercise of breaking the goal down into smaller, tastier chunks that we can work with. So first off, write down that 5-year goal in the toolkit, on a piece of paper, on a Post-it note. Write it down, make it real. Be specific when you're writing down that 5-year goal. Think about who, in addition to you, who's involved in that goal. What's the outcome? When do you want to have this happen? We're saying 5 years, but you may have an idea of a specific time that this goal needs to happen for you. Where does it happen? So this could be something to do with your creative practice. It could be a solo show. It could be choreographing a piece. It could be buying a home. It could be finding the perfect studio space for yourself. It could be pursuing another degree. It could be anything, but think big picture, something that would be really big for you in life. So write it down. I'm going to write down my serious through trek, whether it be to the Great Wall of China or not. That's my 5-year goal. And I'll say part of that this last year, I think everyone worked a lot. So one thing I started 2021 with was a promise to myself to eke out time to just relax and enjoy. And hiking is one of my happy places. So that 5-year goal feeds back into my own sense of wellness. So it can be business related, it can be practice related, it can be family related, it can be something that just nourishes your soul. So once you've got that 5-year goal written down, think about it for a minute. Think about all the things that go into getting to that 5-year goal. What are the steps? What might you need to do? How can you break that big project into smaller projects? So now I want you to write down 2 goals that you can work on with a 3-year span. For me, thinking about doing a extensive hike, I probably need to get my endurance up. I am hoping that the plan is to schedule some semi-extensive hikes in the next couple of 3 years to get myself ready. So that's one of my 3-year goals. Another 3-year goal for me, I have this grand idea of this long through hike, but I probably need to figure out what supplies I need for that and start to accumulate that. So my other 3-year goal is to build out a proper pack so that I can go out into the wilderness and actually be prepared for what I'm getting myself into. So give yourself a minute and think about that 3-year span and what you need to do. What are those smaller projects that you can work on? Now everyone's got their 3-year goal. And if you haven't jotted down your 3-year goal, it's okay. Take your time with it. So I give you 3-year goals, either on paper or simmering back here. Let's break it down even further. And let's get to 2021. Let's focus on this year. What are 2 goals that you can set for yourself for 2021? Now, keep in mind that you want these 2 goals to feed into that bigger picture of your 5-year goal. How can these goals can be individual projects, individual ideas that still feed into your bigger picture of success. So think about that shorter term. What can you do this year? And remember, we're going to be specific. We're looking at specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and the time base is already built into this exercise. We're doing 5, 3, and 1 year. So give yourself a second, think about that. Write down 1 goal. If you can't think of 2, you can come back and add in the other one. If you've got 7 goals you want to write down because you're just feeling really on it today, great, go for it. I don't know what my 1-year goals will be if I'm thinking bigger picture of doing a through hike. I mean, I'll say last year was probably one of the more sedentary years I've had personally. So maybe my 1-year goal needs to be getting on some sort of regimen where I'm taking a hike once a week just to get my endurance built up before I go on that semi-epic 3-year hike. Now that we've kind of talked about the 5, 3, and 1-year goal, let's take a second. We're going to go back through, and you don't have to do this in this moment. You can take your time and do this later, but it's really important to analyze your goals using these questions, and you'll find these in the toolkit. So how does this goal, whether it be your 5-year, your 3-year, your 1-year goal, how does that goal fit into your bigger picture of success? Now, as we've been walking through this, I've mentioned making sure that your 3-year goal helps your 5-year goal, your 1-year goal helps your 3-year goal. But let's talk like big picture, your life, who you are, where you want to be. How does this fit into your picture of success? For me personally, I think the trek would be it would fit into my picture of success because work-life balance is really important to me and something that I struggle with pretty regularly. So being able to put that time aside for myself and really do something purely just for me would be huge. Be good, good habit to build. So think about all your goals again. What tools and assets do you already have to get you to this goal? I will be the first to admit that sometimes I come up with projects or ideas for pieces, and rather than go through my studio and look for existing materials or stop to think about who in my network might have a specific tool that I could just borrow for the weekend so that I could get something done, I go straight to shopping for random tools and supplies on the internet. Um, so that one's something that I have to stop myself and think about a lot. What do I already have at my fingertips? What can I make work for me that is already easily accessible? But I mean, I told you before, I like making lists and planning, and I think that shopping for supplies is just part of that weird mania. Now, going back to SMART goal bullet points, is it attainable? So let's think about what complications, what hurdles could come up as you work towards these goals that you've written down. It could be, I'm thinking in my case, if I'm looking at doing a long through hike, I could hurt myself doing one of the shorter hikes. Like, how would I get around that? I would have to figure out how to rehabilitate myself. Another possible hurdle, if I'm talking about doing a really long through hike, is taking time off of work or taking time out of life. So that's something when I'm thinking about that 5-year goal, I'm already thinking about like how long would I go? Would I be gone for a month? How would I juggle my schedule? How do I start planning now for a month off 5 years from now? In some ways that sounds crazy, but I mean, time passes so quickly. So think about what hurdles you could run into and how you would troubleshoot, how you would solve that problem when it comes up. I'm thinking, if your goal is working on a big installation project, a hurdle could be finding the right space so that you can work on your piece. That might go back to like, what do you have at your disposal? Do you know people in your network that have access to space that aren't using it? Do you know someone who has, a huge warehouse space that has nothing in it? Can you reach out to them? Thinking of if your goal is a residency, what hurdle could you run into? Scheduling, what if the residency is not available at the time that you can take time off? Can you reach out to them and explain your schedule and see if they can work with you? Sometimes it's nice to, if you have a contingency plan when things go kind of squirrely, it's not that stressful because you already have a basic plan of attack to get around it. And the last question, this is the like getting things moving question. What are the action steps? What's the first step you need to take towards that goal? For my goal of a trek, I probably just need to start like getting on a regimen of walking X number of miles every day and trying to incrementally get that X number higher and higher. And I promise I will do check-ins on the internet, let y'all know if I actually make it to the Great Wall of China, because I will be thrilled if I can make this happen. Very happy. Now, like I said, you should take your time with this. I've kind of breezed through the toolkit today. It's your life. These are big decisions and big projects that you're thinking about. So take your time with this, think about it, sleep on it, come back to it. What I will say, I would really urge you to write it down. Writing it down just makes such a big difference. Make sure that you are sticking to assessing using the SMART goal system: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-based. It's really helpful, gets you out of your head. We're all creatives with really big ideas. You got to break down those ideas so you can actually get going with them. And I think that really, really helps me personally to break apart a project and actually get moving instead of just, kind of marveling at the weight of a large project. Now, I asked in this workshop for you to do 1 5-year, 2 3-year, 2 1 year. I said, as many goals as you want, as long as they're realizable, as long as they're realistic. There's no such thing as too many. So visiting the goals that I've written down over the years has been such an amazing moment. I remember the first time I really dug into writing my goals down was actually through Artist Inc. with Fresh Arts. They went through the program, and there are exercises where you take some time and you write your goals down. And I did it, and I kind of put them away just on a shelf with all the other notebooks that I have, because if you haven't guessed, I maybe have way too many notebooks. And I came back to them maybe 6 months later. Something came up and I just needed to review the material. And I was shocked that I had knocked off a couple of the goals already. Came back a year later and looked at those goals again. And I had knocked out not only some of my 1-year goals, 3-year goals, I had knocked out several, like 2 of my 5-year goals. Did not expect that at all. And I really think it came from holding myself accountable. I'd put it down on paper. I knew that it existed out there, and going back and getting to scratch that off, put that nice line through it and like a check mark next to it was such a feeling of success. I mentioned earlier that I also do my success inventory once a year. I would invite all of you to try that, especially this year. I think that last year, 2020, was very special, and we all have a lot of weight that we're carrying from that. Take a minute and congratulate yourself for all the work that you did. Because I know all of us did a ton of work and did amazing things, and we're getting through it. So give yourself a moment, write down the amazing things that happened in your work life, in your creative life, in your personal life. Be simple as like, you planted your garden and it actually took. Great, that's a success. Write it down, celebrate it. I would invite you to do that this year and do it in future years too. But this year, more than ever, we need to take time to give ourselves a break and give ourselves a pat on the back. Well, that is it for the workshop portion of our workshop. We're going to switch over to Q&A now.
Yo, thank you so much. That was great. I think the thing that I struggle most with, with goals is like, I just keep them in my head. And I think I'm just used to kind of like the urgency of things, where like, I need to get this done, I need to get this done. And there is something to be said of just sitting down and actually like planning these things out and writing them down. And so thank you so much for saying all that. As far as questions, please, if you have a question, put it in the comments. I do definitely want to address the issue with the toolkit. Some of you couldn't download it. We just emailed in the middle of the workshop. We emailed everyone with the toolkit, and then you can also download it here. It's in the comment section of the YouTube, so I think you can click on that to go to the link. But in case you can't see it, it's right here. So also want to give a quick shout out to Huntsville and Portland. People are tuning in from Huntsville and Portland. We appreciate y'all sharing this space with us. And so I guess while we wait for some questions to come in, I guess my question for you, Epi, is, so engaging 1 to 5 year plans, I guess, do they all have to kind of lead up to each other, or are there just some things that you just need a year to complete? So for me, for example, like my 5 year plan would probably include like my 1 year plan would probably be like, all right, I want to work on this manuscript. So I'm a writer. I'm gonna work on this manuscript. The 3 year project is to have that book fully edited. And the 5 year plan would be to have it published. But then there are just some things where I'm like, I don't know, I want to curate an art exhibition, and I'm going to put it for 1 year, but it might not happen. And so for you, how do you prioritize those goals?
It's so personal, right? And I guess it depends on how you approach your practice. I definitely leave like room each year for a certain number of proposals that may just come up throughout the year, for like open calls for shows. And, those are things that sometimes that it's going to happen on an annual basis, and you can plan ahead and say, well, like 3 years from now, I want to do that show. Sometimes you have no idea a new call is going to come up. So I think that, I keep room in that 1 year. I try not to pack the 1 year too tight. And I definitely don't have like 25 year goals. I have like 3 or 4. And I find that, those 5 year goals, especially when they don't, if it's like a self-imposed 5 years that you've put on it, sometimes you'll like knock them out before you know it because you've thrown it out there. I know I've had that happen with like residency projects. Like I think I had that down as a 5 year, and then within a year and a half, it happened. It just worked itself out. It was the right time, the right place, I see a question about how much flexibility do you build into your plan? Do you find yourself revising it along the way to your goal? Yes. I definitely think that, especially with bigger projects that are broken into chunks, and I'll speak specifically to the creative end of this, because we are all creatives. I always have really great ideas about how I'm going to fulfill a project, and I will break it down and come up with all of these steps and outline things, and halfway through it, we'll realize that, column 3 makes no sense. I think it's really important to be able to scrap things and say, that didn't work. Let me reassess. Let me figure out what really does work for that individual project. And it's really important when you're editing not to think, it doesn't take away from like you getting closer to success. It's just things change. Especially in the creative world, things change a lot. You can have things planned, especially if you're working with other people and something happens and you have to like change directions, change gears really quickly. But yeah, I think flexibility is good. I think that if you stay really rigid, then you're going to get frustrated with the process. And the idea of setting goals is not to keep yourself in a box and just say like, I have to, blinders on, move forward. It's more of a way to just continue to keep yourself accountable so that you are moving forward and you're being able to track that you're moving forward.
Yeah, I think in line with this question, again, I guess I'll speak to my experience as a writer. I think a few years ago, I had like this goal of like, I want my chapbook of poems to be picked up and published. That's my goal for this year. And then I would keep doing it, and I'd almost keep accomplishing it, but at the end of the year, it didn't happen. And it was very easy for me to be frustrated myself. But then I was like, but wait a minute, I finished a whole like chapbook. I can now just build this into like a bigger book. And so even though, quote unquote, it did not happen, or like, I guess I would say, quote unquote, it failed. But that's the thing. It's kind of like I still had that building block there to jump from. So yeah, things that were out of my hand, like it's not, I guess, a press not picking it up is out of my hands. But what is in my hands is to kind of expand the project or to turn it into a 3-year project.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, like of how we can shift our goals to be bigger, better goals sometimes. I definitely found during the beginning of quarantine, I had plans for a lot of things that fell through, but had a show that was meant to open in person at the beginning of the summer, and the city was on lockdown, so it wasn't a question of like, well, maybe we can make this happen. There was just no having it happen. So I was a little disappointed for like a hot second. I was like, well, put a lot of work into that. Guess I'm just gonna. And before I, could even get to the point of like, I guess I'll just like put a pin in it. Decided that we were going to look at it a different way, and ended up just shifting the entire project to a virtual setting. And I can tell you, like the changes that happened from our plans for the in-person show to the virtual setting, like it exploded into something so much more magical than it would have been if we had just gone through with our original plan. And I think having the ability to just like shift and move made for something really great. Like, I'm so glad that happened, but I never would have planned for it.
Sometimes it's the journey, not the destination, man. So we got another question from Reina Coluda. How do you figure out your maximum number of goals or know how much is realistic? Speaking as someone who tends to collect projects that ends up juggling 10 to 20 big goals at one time.
I don't think there's too many. I just think you need to like prioritize how many you can handle. Like, you can have 10 goals, but actively be working on 3 because that's like the capacity you have at the time. And then passively be working on the other ones. If like an opportunity comes up, you can like shift it up in priority. I don't think there's such a thing as having too many. If given the right time frame, capacity, they are attainable. I mean, having ideas is great. I really do think it's just prioritizing, like, what can you get done? And it goes back to like, what do you have at your disposal at the moment? What materials, what tools, what people do you have to help you realize those goals? If you've got 2 amazing, great projects, and one of them you're going to have to like go buy a whole bunch of new stuff, spend money out of pocket and hire people, and another one you have people in your life who'd want to collaborate with you and you already have all the materials, well, prioritize that one. Another way to look at that is like, who are you collaborating with, and can they help provide resources? I mean, I think like as creatives, we all have the problem, but it's not a problem. It's actually a kind of like what we do, right? Like, we come up with a million ideas, and if we stopped having ideas, then I don't know. I feel like the world would stop moving if people like us didn't keep coming up with amazing, thoughts.
Yeah, I think to add to that, I think sometimes, so this is a quote by Zora Neale Hurston, who said, some years bring questions and some years bring answers. And it's kind of like, yeah, like sometimes like, yeah, you'll have those 10 goals. And then as you're prioritizing those top 3 or 5, you might actually find that those top 3 or 5 facilitate the success of the other 5, right? Because sometimes, like, I don't know, sometimes I have this like insane idea of like, I'm gonna get into shape and lose like 20 pounds, but maybe at the end of the year I didn't accomplish that. But if I still instituted like a regimen of like, oh, I still did like stretches every other day, that's just better than nothing. Like it was better than not doing anything. And so like, no, I did not lose those 20 pounds at the like, that was one of my 10 goals, but in a way it still counts, right? I still contributed to that, and I can build off of that knowledge. So we have another question from Angel Quesada. To piggyback on Reina, how much is learning to say no? Do you have a philosophy regarding what projects to drop? I think for the most part, people are able to understand that things take time.
Yeah. I am such a big believer in saying no to things. I could go off on that, could be a whole workshop, just like saying no to things. I think especially, and I'm gonna speak to this more particularly to what we all dealt with over the last year. I think that it's really important to know your own capacity and not. I mean, there's pushing, there's good pushing, and then there's pushing yourself too hard for no reason. And there is time. I if I don't feel like I have enough support, whether and that's specific to the goal, the project, I'm more likely to say no to it. If I have to go out of my way to build the support network around a project, if it's not something, and it's much to what you were just speaking to, Reyes. I mean, there's a time and a place for things to kind of like coalesce. If it's not happening, just put it to the side and move on to something that can happen. You can always go back to it. I don't. I'm not a big believer in like, I don't know, continuing and spinning the wheel if it's just not going anywhere.
Yeah. I'll also say that I guess there's a difference in terms of like saying no. I think kind of like a deeper, or like another way to look at it is like, who are you saying no to, right? Are you saying no to someone who's asking you for something, or are you saying no to yourself, right? And so I guess for me, if someone says, hey, like, let's say if 5 people ask me, oh, hey, can you sit on this panel? And they're all in February, in the month of February, but I made a goal for myself to, I don't know, like work on this project, then it's sort of like, what's most important to me? Who am I saying no to? Am I saying no to this organization, or am I going to say no to myself? And so I think I guess that's another way that helps me of kind of saying like when to say no.
Yeah, I kind of ran into this over right before the holidays at the end of last year. I had committed to myself and to a partner that I'd been working with that we would pick up a project, and the goal that we had set was to pick up and create new work before the end of the year. I was burnt out. Like if you had seen me at the end of November, beginning of December, I was just tired. So that was a saying no to myself, and also saying no to the partner that I'm working with. And it felt really good to take that pressure off. And like I had the creative output, like we could have done it, but it felt really good to just say like, no, I'd rather not. We'll come back to it. It's still going to be there. It felt very indulgent, and I ended the year, I think, on a better note for taking a little bit of time for myself.
Yeah, and sometimes I actually have the opposite problem where it's like I don't get enough no's, right? Where it's like, I'll just say this in terms of like grants or like queries, right? And putting things out there. You might plant a lot of seeds, but doesn't mean they're all going to grow, right? And so like this last year, I applied to a bunch of stuff, and maybe only 1 or 2 things said yes to me. And so like, yeah, I wasn't maybe accomplished certain goals that I set, but the ones that I did some of the goals I was able to work on, I worked on really well because I appreciate them that much more. Now I had more time to dedicate to those things. And so, yeah, I would say that. It seems like we're out of questions. Is there, I guess, anything else that you want to mention? I guess we can talk about the Peer Lab.
Yeah.
That's happening next week with the time we have left. What is something that you're going to want to build upon with the Peer Lab?
Well, what I'd love to do for everyone who joins us for Peer Lab is invite everyone to go through those 3, 5, 3, and 1 year goals and kind of work through those questions, like how does it fit into that bigger picture? What do you already have access to as far as resources? What could you need to troubleshoot, and what your next action steps are? Go through those for all of those goals, and then we'll have just an open forum discussion, and we can talk through some of those goals. I'd love to talk through especially the troubleshooting portion and the resources portion. I think sometimes when you're thinking about what resources you have access to yourself, you can have your own personal blinders on, and talking it through with other people helps me, at least personally, realize, oh, wait, I have access to all of these people and all of these things that I'm just not thinking about because I'm so like myopically thinking about this project. So we'll be able to talk through all of that. I'm also kind of really excited to see and just hear what other people's goals are moving forward. And
Yeah. So yeah, I will say that it's going to be more intimate. The peer lab, it's going to be kind of like a Zoom room, so you're going to be able to have conversation and feedback and all that good stuff. So yeah, I think hearing other people's goals, I think sometimes inspires me, especially in terms of how they accomplish those things. Yeah, so sometimes it is like you just don't know who has access to what or who knows something that you don't know, and so sometimes like yeah, like as you said, speaking it into existence. One aspect is for you, but sometimes it can also be for other people. Because if you hear someone else speak something to existence, that might give you ideas.
I love when people come to me to like work through ideas. It's such a great exercise being able to like have that conversation with another person. Like I'm like, yes, bring me all of your thoughts. We'll work through it. We'll turn it into bullet points. We will make this work. But yeah, I always feel like I walk away from those conversations with a lot. I also, anyone who's coming to the Peer Lab next week, I would really invite you to take that second to do your success inventory from last year. And I'm not going to ask everyone to share their entire success inventories, but I think it would just be a lovely moment for everyone to share something that they felt really good about from 2020. Just kick us off.
Yeah, if you're on social media and you post anything about your goals, use the hashtag #FreshArtsFreshStart, because we love to know what people are working on. We love to know if people are working on certain things, we can formulate a workshop or a toolkit around that. And you know, if like a bunch of people said they want to do podcasts, we'll be more than happy to do like a podcast workshop and all that good stuff. Just as an example, it could be any number of things. And so, on that note, thank you so much, Epi. It's always a pleasure to hear you and your mind at work. Thank you so much for everything that you do. I'll see you around. I'll see you next week.
See you next week, and I hope to see a lot of you next week too.
All right. Bye, everyone.